Hi, it's Mia, and I'm taking a study break as I have been doing all day, and I'm really scared. My medical board exam is in like 2 weeks. What's today? Today's the 18th. It's in like 2 weeks, and I had been studying with a classmate, which we had been getting distracted talking about things. But for the most part, we were studying quite a bit, and she said she was sick yesterday and said she didn't study at all, and I studied a little bit. Had an appointment for my son, family counselor, really early, like 8. I don't know why 8 o'clock in the morning seems like a good time. Doesn't seem like a good time to me when it's my only day off. I made a quick video, but it's on my computer. I don't know how to, I haven't really wanted to spend a lot of time. It was basically, somebody had sent me a Monsanto, 14-year-old who was against Monsanto, and some talk show host or someone she was complaining about, but basically it was, in my mind, it feels like just, we pay attention. Somebody's like, hey, let's start a rally for this event, and then someone else is like, yeah, let's get our kids involved, and then I feel like, well, we're looking at this one specific issue, like a million other things are going on behind our backs that we're not even paying attention to, or a bunch of things worse than that are going on, and nobody cares. It's almost like they're laughing. The people that are, the corporations are like, haha, they're so busy worrying about that they don't realize that we're doing all this other stuff to them in their, in their pocketbooks, in their health. Really, like, people, I don't know why people don't think, sometimes, because I get bored, people used to complain when I was in high school. I don't do it now, but I apparently used to use big words and stuff. I don't use any big words unless I'm describing something that has to do with medical school, which happens a lot, but not in public. And right before I went to medical school, I had a job for 2 years at a daycare center. I was mostly with 1 or 2 year olds and then babies. And then before that, my kids were like babies for several years, for like toddlers, babies for a few years before, before I worked at a daycare center. So I had a hard time because I didn't I went to school and stuff and redid some writing classes because I like writing, and I don't know why I redo so many classes. Take a writing class from one teacher and take the exact same one from another. They have a whole different perspective on everything. And this one was like, she threw away all the grammar and language things that we learned in elementary school. And I was like, she's like, you don't have to do all that stuff. There's nothing written in the book that says you have to do it that way. But when I did my med school application, I decided that I better do it the old-fashioned way, because there was like 20 people in that class, and all the people that are going to be looking at my application did not take that class, and they're going to be like, what is wrong, and why is she starting all of her sentences with but? Yeah, so I've already dealt with some being rebellious. She wasn't being rebellious, she was just saying that there wasn't really written rules about certain things. It's 4 o'clock. I told myself I'm having a yard inspection. And we got this greenhouse thing, which I was paranoid. I didn't want to get mice in there. Just one of those cheap, flimsy plastic, hopefully it's not as flimsy as it feels right now, things. I just wanted, my dad told me to throw away all my plants. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've spent the past 14 years, almost every year, trying to grow a garden. And my first several attempts were garbage, pretty much. The best garden I had was when I bought a house that had a garden, and I didn't know that I was supposed to pick everything when I was supposed to pick it. Nobody taught me that. Someone else had planted it, and I didn't pick it. I should have asked the lady who moved across the street, lived in the house prior to it, to us moving in, because, whatever happened, somebody died, and that it was owned and passed on to someone else. Weird stuff happens with families and wills and stuff, but, anyways, I let everything go to seed, and I didn't know any better. I have some lettuce going to seed right now. I usually don't have lettuce growing. It's not like my friends who plant in container boxes, where they get this huge head of lettuce, bigger than my head, and they're like, oh my gosh, I have 20 of these, you gotta take them all. I get like, oh, let me pull a couple leaves off this one, hope I don't kill it. So I guess I'm getting better at learning. And I did learn at a farm yesterday that if you take leaves off the kale, just take a couple at a time. Which is kind of what I'm doing in containers, because I don't want to completely demolish the plant, and then I don't know what to do. Do you want it to seed? Is that like into season, or do you do something with the seeds to keep it growing year round? Or, you know, I haven't gotten that far, because the better I do each year, the more stuff actually grows and survives, and then it's like, okay, now what? Tomatoes I've got down pretty well, and apparently my friend last year, her geranium, she took inside to her dad's, and he's kept the whole thing alive. And this year, the year before, it was warm enough that my geraniums stayed alive 2 years, and then in the spring they passed on. But that was exciting. We have bad insulation, at least I think we do. I put all the plants, like if there's early frost, I put them all next to the house and feel like all of the leaves everything is not getting frozen, you know, because all of our heat is going right through the walls. So I just wanted to say that sometimes I feel like I have a lot of stress in my life that it's hard to deal with, and then I have this like overwhelming feeling like me and my kids are alone, because we've gone so many years pretty much alone. As long as we're in our house, we don't really get a lot of phone calls from relatives or emails or cards or anything. We don't get many visitors at all unless it's inspections. And a lot of times there will be an emergency, like emergency, not really emergency, like a power outage or a snowstorm or something, and I will have watched, or I don't watch the news, I would have read the weather report online and found out that something was going to happen, and I would make it so that I'm not driving far away from home, and I would stock up on different supplies and come home and heat food up for my kids so that it's ready to eat if something were to happen to electricity. Because like when I was a kid, we had two fireplaces and a big boiler thing out in the garage that could use wood, oil, and whatever else you wanted to burn, newspaper if you wanted to. We would put food and potatoes and stuff out there, but I don't have the means to do that here in a rental. There's so many rules. I think I used to read my lease, and I must have cleaned up one day and misplaced that. It's probably back in the file cabinet, but I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many rules that I'm concerned about how many rules there are. That's hard to keep track because they keep changing them. So basically, I told my daughter and kids, like, there's emergency supplies, keep the batteries here. There's certain solar powered chargers you can keep in here. I'm trying to label things so they know where things are, especially if I forget where it is, they can remember, or if I'm not home, they can remember. So now my kid has been, I had like a gas mask for anatomy lab because of the cadavers, and I sold it to someone, and like my kid's been begging me for one, and they had one on discount at the store today. I like bought it because I was gonna buy it online, and I bought it for her, and she's like excited. And my son has these Chinese biker goggles that are completely dark and iridescent, and then they have padding, and they're like silver all around here with a big band. And she was wearing that. She's got on camo shirt. She cut up some camo long johns and put them on her arms, and then I don't know if she has bottoms. She should have bottoms. I was gonna order her some from the army surplus, that like just kids. There's like novelty items. She's not exactly a little kid. I never really save up money to do stuff like that. But it's kind of funny. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just trying to take care of my kids, and I don't want to make them crazy and think something really bad is going to happen. But at the same time, if something bad were to happen, at least they'd be safe. And she does, a lot of art and painting, nail polish and stuff. It's like, go ahead. If that one is for vapor, organic vapor anyway, just maybe use it when you're painting your nails or when you're coloring with Sharpies and stuff. That stuff stinks. So I feel like a really weird mom. And I feel like a lot of what's driving it is just the way my parents were. More, you know, my dad being in the military and my mom like always prepared for emergency, and then my grandma probably growing up through the Depression and saving things and bringing things in the car for emergencies. And the only other thing, I know there's a lot of people that, like, you could watch every, like, prepper type video on the internet and come up with your own just by watching theirs. And some stuff I believe is really incorrect. But I feel like you watch a couple things and it's like someone got it from someone and they got it from someone and they all just, like, copied each other and then bought the stuff and then laid it all out on the bed and showed it to you guys. And I know these people get a lot of views and stuff. Nobody really watches my videos. It's just, I think it's interesting. There's been a time in my life where I was like living in a tent for a few months. It was very interesting how little we lived on. There was actually a lot of free time, and sometimes was traveling in a vehicle in my Jeep. And just, you know, after all that, when I grew up as a Girl Scout, it was like, not really roughing it. Sometimes we had, back then, sometimes, I didn't own a tent. We had to use those Girl Scout ones with the blue canvas and the poles, and they didn't have zippers, and there was no wall. There was a wall, but it wasn't connected to the bottom. It was just like straps, like tie-ons is how you kept it, you know. And there was bugs and stuff. Everything was crawling in the tent. When I was a little girl, it's just like you're sleeping outside, and we would drive for hours to get out into the middle of the woods. Even if it was a Girl Scout camp, there was like nothing. I don't even think we had running water. We might have had like a pump. When I grew up, there was a lot of pumps still around everywhere, so we'd have to pump the water and travel with a wagon or something to get it. I think it was a chore that we switched every day. So it's interesting thinking of people talking about going and living outside or living inside. And I mean, even if it's for my own good or for my kids' good, I just used to do a lot of rugged stuff and just not really even having, like, my brother had a mess kit. I think I borrowed it to use it for scout. Like, my mom didn't go and buy me, like, with my kids now, it's like they're going somewhere and they need like $500 worth of equipment. You know, a lot of it we had already gathered from thrift stores and looked for the cheapest sleeping bags. And then once they, you know, they did 6 years of that. My son only did a few, like 4 years of that. Yeah, one of them he was just a guest. But it's like, wow, before, when I was a kid, I didn't even have a sleeping bag. So I'm like sleeping with a blanket, and I think my mom had like some kind of cozy thing that actually had a zipper on it, but it wasn't a sleeping bag. It was like one of those things. It's not like a Snuggie. It was better than a Snuggie. It's almost like a sleeping bag with the top half doesn't zip. It just wraps around your arms with snaps. We were having that. They tell us to use a bedroll. So most of us, I'm talking like 9 years old, we would just go out in the sticks and just with a roll up blanket and a sheet or something. I don't even think we had it. It was like a roll up a couple blankets and go sleep outside, and they'd buy us milk and we'd drink all the milk the first night because we didn't have any coolers or anything. Like, we probably had like a cooler, but we didn't have any long-term coldness. She would tell us to drink it all in one night, and then the rest of the week we would just drink water. And I don't even know. I don't remember eating. I remember eating green beans and bananas with chocolate chips and marshmallows mixed in with them, all on a campfire. That's pretty much all I remember. I don't remember eating meat. I liked it. And I remember we would make the fire from scratch. We didn't have any special tools. We just went around the woods and dug around, separated the kindling group, the firewood, I don't even know the names, you know, the little stuff to the big stuff, and we'd get up in groups and we'd all go out in the woods, gather stuff with our hands full and bring it back. I did that when me and my ex-husband were camping back and forth across the country, and we did that at a campground, and they're like, no, you're not allowed to do that. They're like, we're not allowed to collect wood. What? Like, no, you have to buy wood. That was the first time I'm like, oh my gosh. And it's like, it's against the rules to collect any twigs and branches and anything around. And there's like all these people with generators and stuff. And like, are you kidding me? All this noise. And there was these people, a bunch of dogs. They had like a whole They had like 10 steaks and like 2 people. They were throwing them all to the dogs. Like, oh, let's give these. I don't even think we had any food. Like, let's give these people a steak. I was like, oh, that's weird. I hadn't had steak in forever. But yeah, when I asked my parents, I had steak all the time. But as a 17 and up, I didn't. So it was just a weird experience trying to be like rugged. And I went camping with my son's Cub Scouts, and they forbid me to use the fire to cook my food. And I'm like, I've never not used the fire to cook my food. It was really weird. And I wanted to make the fire, and all the men were like, no, don't even touch it. And I wanted to like try to at least throw something on there and like rearrange. Like, no, it's our job. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's like my only reason I ever go camping. It's like the fire, like the fire master. But I took my kids on like a survival weekend. We actually went yurting. It was still wintertime. It was freezing cold. We did have a wood stove, which I had never dealt with before. And we had a gas grill that we used, which I hadn't dealt with before. And they were both very interesting learning experiences. So I just wanted to share that. Everyone, I think, just needs to be careful of copying each other. I know some things you see a good video and you're like, wow, I want to share what I learned with someone else. But it's also interesting to hear people that have actually used the supplies and maybe stayed out, even if they're in their backyard, or even, say they're going to not use any electricity in their house and just maybe do a weekend where they just use their bottled water and don't even turn on the tap, don't even flush the toilet or something. I know that would be, but in reality, think about maybe you want to flush the toilet, maybe you want to think about what would happen if the sewers and stuff were backed up, which would be gross because you don't want it to backflow, which very well could happen. How do you stop that? And if something like that were to happen in my house, I would be outside in a tent with anything that I want to keep dry somewhere up off the floor. So I think we just need to think through things, maybe try some things out. And if people see someone's video, and I'm not saying not to share the same information, but it would be interesting. Maybe just remember some things you did as a kid or you learned from the elder and like add it to yours, because that could be valuable information. There's a lot of people in the past that I know, these people are starting to die off, that didn't have electricity, or they used coal as their main source of energy, or they didn't use the grocery store. Like maybe like they went to the grocery store twice a year. Everything else they grew on a farm. During the summer they had produce. During the winter they had canned goods that they made themselves. And then during the summer they had fresh vegetables, but they didn't have that in the winter. And they would go around. People told me how stupid people in West Virginia is, which I thought was really weird. People that I knew out there helped me when I gave birth to my daughter. There was no relative, no one else would assist us or even talk to me. But this lady that had grew up in West Virginia was telling me a lot of stuff. And some of the stuff there was a lot of unhealthy people. You don't want to copy a really unhealthy habit, or things that I didn't give my kids the cereal and all this stuff, and that stuff was making them sick. I didn't want to force them to eat something that's making them sick. Their life didn't depend on it. They can eat regular people food or nurse for a year and a half like they did. But the lady did go out one day and made sure to show me every plant that I could eat off the land. And she goes, we did this. And she was 66. Like, we did this every year because we were excited to actually have fresh produce. And she told me when to pick it and, when it starts to get tough and sour and bitter and all this stuff. And that's the stuff, some of that stuff I'm paying tens of thousands of dollars to learn. Some of these things they used as food could also be used as medicine. And you think back, people are like vegan and vegetarian. I'm not, I'll go vegan for a while sometimes. Just digestive issues is more of my thing, or weight gain issues. We're just thinking about people that grew up on farms in the past and ate stuff off the land, and even ate blueberries and raspberries from the wild, got mushrooms, went fishing, and then had their own cattle, had their own milk, had their own gardens, well water. And you just think of the diseases that they had back then. And a lot of it was infectious diseases, or polio, or different things that are just contagious. But a lot of it wasn't, like a lot of cancers and a lot of diabetes, and some of those diseases, they're like, oh, well, diabetes didn't have treatment back then, so the people died young. But at the same time, look at old medical histories, or even even old novels that talk, or novels written in the past can mimic real life, but like diaries and stuff. You see what was causing people. I mean, gunshot wounds, snake bites. It wasn't a lot of abnormal cells in the body. Like, literally the body is creeped out. There wasn't electricity, there wasn't cell phones, there wasn't like all this stuff in outer space transmitting satellite reception stuff. And even being in a neighborhood, a building, an apartment complex, there's like 100 Wi-Fis, and those are all transmitting some sort of pulsations or something, you know. And I'm not trying to be worried about it, all this stuff, but we just need to think. We just need to think about. We just need to think about what's going on around us, but at the same time enjoy our life. And just like if somebody had a job and they were saving for retirement, maybe sleeps better at night. Maybe we'll sleep better at night if we are saving some batteries and some bottled water, just in case. And I don't want to go into all that right now. But it's like I said, with all of the people fighting against the genetically modified stuff and stuff, I'm like, what about all the stuff that's in the water? What about all the additives that's in the food? What about all the health food stores that brag about how they're supporting non-GMO and crops in our county, but yet they're selling the same GMO products that they're trying to stop? And it's like, what's really going on behind the scenes? Read all of the labels in the health food stores. You know, some of the health food stores I can't even go into anymore. Either, you know, they were trying to rip me off, and, you know, just different things. So I have to go back to studying so I can cut the grass in an hour